Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us during the second afternoon of Florida Shines Virtual College Week. My name is Nashla Dawari, and I will be facilitating today's session. Now, before we begin, I want to go over a few items with you today. If you have questions during today's session, please put them in the chat section, and we will address them during the live Q&A or in a follow-up email. Closed captioning is provided for this session, so you can click on the link in the chat box that's provided for you. And we will be recording this session. The recording and all the materials from today will be posted on our website at floridashines.org. The last thing I want to tell you is that we are live on Twitter, so feel free to share your comments and connect with us at FL Shines. I lied. That is not the last thing I want to tell you, because I want to announce something new this year, and that is that we are giving away swag bags to a few winners if you are attending tonight's session. And we are also going to be sending a follow-up email after the session with information about applying for a $1,000 scholarship. This scholarship is being awarded by the Florida Association of Educational Data Systems, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. And we definitely want to encourage you to apply after today's session. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Pedro Hernandez. Pedro is currently one of our outreach representatives for the Office of Student Financial Assistance at the Florida Department of Education. Pedro has over 20 years of financial aid experience. His industry tenure started as a college work study student at Florida State University here in Tallahassee in the financial aid office. And throughout his experience, he's had many positions as a financial aid officer, a lender representative, and so on. We are honored to have you, Pedro, with us today. We're excited for you to share your expertise. We can't wait to learn about bright futures and a lot of financial aid options for our students. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I welcome this opportunity to assist you in promoting such great information to all of your students in the state of Florida, for both students and parents. So without further ado, what are we going to be covering today? First and foremost, our agenda will consist of the Bright Futures home screen, what it looks like. It is a brand new screen. Initial eligibility requirements, the evaluation process, and of course the Florida Financial Application, the FFAA. Now, in regards to the Florida Bright Futures home screen, it is presently located once you go access our website, which is at www.floridastudentfinancialaid.org. Once again, that is floridastudentfinancialaid.org. And the next slide is going to actually show you the actual screenshot that you get once you go to that website. In order to access the state grant scholarships and applications, specifically the Bright Future Scholarship, you will hit on the second tab, which is the State Grant Scholarship and Applications tab. Once you press that tab, you're going to get to this new screen. This is a new screen for this year's high school seniors who are applying and anyone seeking information in regards to all the state scholarship and grant programs. As you can see, there are several ways that you can actually log on and get information about the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. You could actually hit the log on key for high school seniors to log into your information. You could also go on the right-hand side, which outlines all of our state scholarships and grants, including the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, which is highlighted in red. And at the bottom where it says actually you have additional documentation. So on our website you have various information to actually get more in-depth information about the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. In addition to that, when you go to the Florida Bright Futures tab, you're going to see that the Florida Bright Futures has several handbooks. The first handbook is about initial eligibility. The second handbook is about the actual scholarship information. And the third one is once you renew, what is the renewal eligibility criteria. So all three handbooks compose the Florida Bright Futures wealth of information. We highly, highly recommend it. We also have flyers which highlight every program within the Florida Bright Futures program on the bottom, and additional resources for all the information in regards to the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. With all this wealth of information, it should cover absolutely all levels of the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship and all the details in regards on initial eligibility, criteria, and the actual renewal of your Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. The next slide is are Bright Futures initial eligibility requirements. How does one obtain the Florida Bright Future Scholarship? In order to answer that, there are the first and foremost the general requirements. The first requirement is a student has to be a Florida resident and a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen as determined by the student's post-secondary institution. A lot of times when your students are going to go off to college, it is the admissions office who is going to determine whether the student is a Florida resident, U.S. citizen, or eligible non-citizen. So just make sure that that documentation is provided to those institutions, so therefore the financial aid office and any other office within that institution has those criteria for the student. Now, in order for also to, as a general requirement, student has to complete the Florida Financial Aid Application, or the FFAA, no later than August 31st after high school graduation. So if your students are graduating as the cohort for the 2018-2019 school year, it is August 31st of 2019. That's the very last date to submit their application. However, because this application opened up October 1st of 2018, we highly recommend that as soon as you have the opportunity to submit this general requirement, the actual application, go ahead and submit it. Also, another general requirement is that the student has to earn either a standard Florida high school diploma or its equivalent from a Florida public high school or registered private institution, including Florida Virtual School. Now, there are additional requirements, and they have to be that the student must have not been found guilty of or pleaded nolo contrary to a felony charge, be accepted. The student has to be accepted by and enrolled in a degree certificate program at an eligible Florida public or independent post-secondary institution within 2 years of high school graduation, and enrolled in at least 6 non-remedial semester hours or the equivalent in its clock hour equivalency, and that's per term. In addition, there are 4 basic levels of the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. The first one is the Florida Academic Scholars Award, or recognized as the FAS, the Florida Medallion Scholars Award, or the FMS, the Florida Go CO CAPE Scholars, and the Florida Go CO Vocational Scholars. And we're going to review those in a minute and how to actually gain eligibility for each. When it comes for the FAS, or the Florida Academic Scholar, and the Florida Medallion Scholar, on this next slide, you're going to see that the general requirements are 16 actual high school credits. Those 16 credits are 4 classes in English, 4 classes in mathematics, 3 classes in natural science, 3 classes in social science, and 2 credits in world language. Those compose the 16 credit hours that we evaluate your students in order to meet either the Florida Academic or the Florida Medallion scholarship level. Now, within those classes, and just within those classes, the student has to obtain at minimum a 3.5 or higher weighted GPA within those 16 credit hours. Not their overall GPA, but within those 16 credit hours. And retrospectively, a 3.0 GPA within those credit hours for the Florida Medallion Scholarship. Now, those are the first 2 criteria, the classes taken and the GPA. The third criteria is going to be the college entrance exams. In order to qualify for the Florida Academic Scholar, the student has to obtain a 29 ACT or 1290 SAT. For the Florida Medallion, that score would be a 26 or an 1170 SAT, respectively. Now, we at the Florida Department of Education, Office of Student Financial Assistance, what we do is we superscore those test scores. So if at any time during your academic career, all the way up through June 30th of your senior year, you take either the SAT or ACT several times, we're going to take your best subcomponent score. As long as you meet the overall composite, you can actually qualify for that level of scholarship, pertaining that you meet all the other requirements, the classes taken, GPA, and test scores. The fourth requirement is actual service hours. In order to qualify for the Florida Academic Scholar, one needs to complete 100 community service hours prior to high school graduation, or service hours. For the Florida Medallion, those would be 75 community service hours, or service hours in order to actually qualify for the Florida Medallion Scholarship. Now, it is also very important to know that when it comes to students' report cards, the report card is going to have the overall GPA, but all scorecards are required to have acknowledgement that the actual Florida Bright Future Scholarship Program may differ from the GPA on the actual report card. Because remember, our GPA is based on those 16 high school credit hours that are to be taken by the student to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Now, in regards to grade point average, we always get a follow-up question in regards to the evaluation for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. When it comes to the GPA, if the student is taking an actual semester or year course, it's going to actually vary on the weighted of those semester courses or the year courses. If the student is taking an advanced placement AP, pre-international baccalaureate or pre-IB, international baccalaureate IB, pre-advanced international certificate of education or pre-ICE, or advanced international certificate of education ACE, or the dual enrollment or honors program, those courses are going to be weighed once again 0.25 per semester course or 0.50 per year course in their evaluation of those courses. So that is why our requirement is a weighted GPA, and that weighted comes from the actual criteria that you see on this slide. On the next slide is the college entrance exam, as we talked about. Once again, you have until June 30th of your high school graduation year. Even though June 30th could be beyond your actual high school graduation date, the students have until June 30th to actually take all qualifying test scores. Now, you only have until June 30th, even though if there might be additional dates added in July or early August, those dates do not count at this time. It is only those tests taken through June 30th of your high school senior year, so June 30th of 2019. We highly, highly recommend, in order for us to evaluate and to receive those scores, please list a state university. Once again, that is one of the 12 state universities in the state of Florida to accept the to receive your actual test scores. We will then receive those test scores from the test depository if you, once again, list and guaranteed if you actually list a state university. Very important. Service hours. Students must complete service hours during their high school career and prior to high school graduation. Each district is going to actually determine what does and what does not qualify for service hours. But total service hours must be completed and reflected on the student's transcript, and that is how we receive that information. Your actual school district, in this case, Florida Virtual, will receive that information from them directly. Other ways to qualify. If you are as a student who is either a National Merit Finalist, National Hispanic Scholar, Advanced International Certificate or ACE Diploma recipient, or an IB Diploma recipient, you know that you do not have to meet the actual college entrance exams of the SAT or ACT. However, you do have to meet the actual service hour requirement. If, however, you are in either an IB or an ACE program, but you do not get the certificate, that means you qualify under the ACE curriculum or IB curriculum, yes, you indeed need to actually meet the actual test score requirement. Once again, if you are receiving an IB diploma, ACE diploma, National Hispanic Scholars Diploma, or National Merit Finalist, you do not need to submit qualifying test scores. However, if you are in the curriculum, an ACE curriculum, International Bachelor curriculum, you have to submit test scores, service hours, and everything else. Classes taken, GPA received. The next slide is, in regards to the additional Bright Futures actual scholarships, there is the Gold Seal CAPE Scholarship. That CAPE Scholarship is for those students who are going to go study industrial education or certificate programs, certificate services. Those requirements are the student has to meet general high school requirements plus earn a minimum of 5 post-secondary credits through CAPE industry certifications, which will articulate for college credit. Once that is what is completed, and in addition 30 community service hours or service hours. That is a requirement for the actual Gold Seal CAPE scholars. For the Gold Seal CAPE scholars, once again, it is only for those students who are going to study either in an AAS program, an associate program, or a certificate program. However, the Gold Seal CAPE scholar, if once a student enters those programs, then gets an AAS program, but wishes to pursue their education to earn a bachelor's degree, the Gold Seal CAPE scholar will have the ability to actually enroll for an additional 60 credit hours or its clock hour equivalent to meet that actual bachelor's degree program. However, it is very different from the Gold Seal Vocational Scholars because that is, once again, the same thing. It is for those students who are going to go into a vocational career. The student, in order to qualify, has to achieve a 3.0 GPA in the non-elective high school classes, take 3 full credits in a single career and technical educational program, and then within those 3 full credit single career and technical education program classes, the student has to earn a 3.5 weighted GPA. They also have minimum scores on the SAT, ACT, or PERT test, and they have to complete 30 service hours. On the next slide, you're going to see the actual qualifying test scores for each of the individual programs. We're not going to go over all of them, but they are on our website under the first actual book for the Bright Future Scholarship, the Florida Bright Future Student Handbook. All this information is on Chapter 1. Next slide is the Gold Seal. Once again, it is only for applied technology diploma, technical degree programs, or certificate programs. It is not intended for those students who are going into their AA or a bachelor's program. Bright Future's evaluation process and award notification. We have 2 evaluation periods, early evaluation and final evaluations, and all the transcripts should be submitted within 30 days at the end of each semester. Now, early evaluation or 7th semester early evaluation is going to be taken into consideration all of your information that you have taken all the way up through January 31st. So if you have taken test scores, taking classes, all that information, you're going to be early evaluated. And the benefit of early evaluation, if you meet the Florida Academic Scholar, you cannot lose that evaluation for the Florida Academic. If you fall before 3.5, that is not the case. That is why it is essential that if you meet early evaluation, you obtain that scholarship. All you have to do is graduate at the end to enroll at that level. Now, the Florida Financial Aid application, it is mandated. Application has opened up October 1st. It is mandated for all Florida Bright Future Scholarship students who want to receive the scholarship funds. It has opened up October 1st of this year. It runs all the way through August 31st of next year. But if you go ahead and do it now, it is, once again, one of the prime general requirements to obtain the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, the actual application itself. You do have certain dates, I do apologize, of April 1st for specific scholarships. Make sure that if you are a qualifying student, you have met all of the documentation requirement by April 1st. But once again, if you do it by October 1st, you're going to be better off. The application now, it is a 2-step process. Once you get into the actual application, you're going to create a student account, and then you're going to be able to complete the actual Florida Financial Aid application. Once again, on the very first website, Florida Student Financial Aid, under Bright Futures, you're going to click the first-time applicants on the main page or on the right-hand side. If you're a returning student, you can log back in and complete your application if you have already begun to do so. The student account is going to look very, very, very user-friendly. It is very web-based now, very easy to understand, very easy to navigate. Once again, your login credentials are going to be posted once you actually fill your profile, and they're also going to be emailed to you. Make sure you write those down. Make sure you notate them, because this is how you're going to be able to come back to our website and see where you are in the evaluation process. You could actually come to our website and see what your schools have reported you to being eligible as. Once again, this information is going to be sent to you as a first-time applicant. The information is going to be sent, and if you submit it, your Florida Financial Aid application, you are going to be confirmed that it has been sent to us. Now, when you get to the very bottom, make sure you do not forget to hit the submit button. Make sure you only hit it once. It might take a little while, and once again, once you receive acknowledgement, you're going to see this page. The actual success, your Florida Financial Aid or FFAA has been verified and has been submitted successfully. Make sure that you receive that. You can actually close it at that point. But if you close it, you're then going to receive your actual Florida Financial Aid application results. It's going to tell you all the programs that you qualify for, and if you do not qualify, the reason that you do not qualify for certain programs. And for more information, you could always visit our website, floridastudentfinancialaid.org. The website, once again, is going to have the Florida Bright Future Student Handbook. It's going to have all of this information readily available. If you have any question or concern in regards to a specific, when it comes to a specific test score, GPA, class that you've taken, grades that you receive, you can contact our customer service number at 888-827-2004. You could also email us at osfa@fldoe.org, or once again, you could go to our informational site. This is for counselors that can submit that information, and this is once again for counselors, so no need to go to those other two websites. The next one is, and that is the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Does anyone have any questions or concerns at this time?
Hey, Pedro. Yes, lots of questions from our audience. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing that information regarding the Bright Futures. If you don't mind, we're going to open it up for questions during this live Q&A, and we're going to start addressing some of these, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So, Pedro, the first question is about eligibility related to residency. So can a student qualify for a Florida Bright Future Scholarship if they're not a resident of Florida, but they're going to a Florida school potentially?
No. The student, once again, part of the meeting the general requirements is a student has to be a Florida resident and a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. And once again, the Office of Admissions is going to determine that for every student who enrolls at the different colleges and universities within the state of Florida.
Okay, great. So really important for them to connect with their post-secondary institution if they're looking at that. Pedro, the next question is related to volunteer hours. Why are they important for the Bright Future Scholarship? And then for students that want to make sure that they're submitting the right hours, how do they submit those, and who do they send them to?
Correct. When it comes to actual volunteer hours or community service hours, these are all set guidelines established by the Florida legislation in terms of fulfilling the Florida Bright Future Scholarship requirements. Now, those requirements, every school district is different in how what they value as approved service hours or community service hours, and I would check with your high school guidance counselor or your district office. Now, those hours are going to be, if you document those hours, once you have them approved, and if you document it back to your high school guidance counselor or the actual person responsible for that, they will actually enter those in their system and report them like they report grades, hours, grades, GPA, classes taken, community service hours. We get that from the school districts or from the online providers of that information. It is part of your actual transcript that's submitted to us every single year. As I indicated earlier, how we evaluate this is we evaluate every year. We get 2 uploads from the district, a fall and a spring. So if you do 2 uploads for the 4 years that you're in high school, you're going to get a total of 8 actual uploads. The reason we say that if on the 7th semester or mid-year through your senior year you qualify for the actual Bright Future Scholarship, you cannot lose it during your 8th semester or your last semester, and therefore you only have to graduate, and by meeting all the requirements by 7th semester, you're still good. So that is why we highly, highly recommend talk to your guidance counselor, talk to your administrators. They are going to be providing us the classes that you take, your grades, your GPA, your community service hours. We are going to get the actual test scores from the test depository if you list a state university as part of your test scores. And the online application is something that you have to go to our website, download the application, not download, but actually enter the information online, and that is one of the, and that includes the 5th actual requirements to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship.
All right, so Pedro, timing is really important, and that's actually a great segue into our next set of questions. So timing for when students take the test, obviously sometimes students take the SAT and the ACT more than once. So if they get a submitted score and they qualify for a certain level, is it possible to then increase their score the next time they take the test and get a better higher level scholarship and be upgraded that way? And is there a certain timing for that?
That is correct. We will evaluate all test scores taken throughout the entire career of a high school student, including all the way up to June 30th, even if that date is past their high school graduation. We will take your best subcomponent score of each test that you take. That's what we super score. As long as you meet the overall composite for that level, we will award you based on that level achieved. So if you get a 29 ACT or 1290 SAT or higher, you're going to qualify for the Florida Medallion, pending you meet the 3.5 weighted GPA. You take all the classes, you submit your online report, and you submit your 100 hours of community service. So you have to meet all the requirements at that level. And yes, you could qualify, increase that test score as long you have until, once again, June 30th of your high school senior year. If you graduate in May or June, you still have until June 30th to submit qualifying test scores.
So Pedro, you actually just covered requirements, and a question just came in regarding those requirements. So is it possible for requirements to change in a few years when students get ready to graduate? Would the requirements become more rigorous or less rigorous? How would that work?
Right. When it comes to the Florida Bright Future requirements, every year the legislative session approve and could change your actual requirements for the actual criteria to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Now, could it also change mid-year? Yes. It is always up to the Florida legislation to actually change the criteria and change the actual awarding amount. So it is imperative that students understand that the criteria that's set for this year, the criteria that we have this year, is set for this year's high school seniors and their graduation cohort, and also the awarding criteria or the dollar amount that's being paid to current Bright Future students in their post-secondary career. Now, after this legislative session, your legislators could elect to either keep it the same, change it, augment it. Anything that's different, it can change, and possibly every single year with every legislative session.
All right, so good to know. Pedro, I'm going to stay with those types of eligibility questions because we're getting a lot of them. When it comes to the GPA, students want to know, do you calculate the GPA based on the transcript that's submitted from the school? Does the student need to get something from the school to get that? What is the official source that you use to be able to make your determination?
Right. Our official source is going to be the transcript that's provided by your institution, whether that's a high school, private high school, public high school, online institution. That the grade that is on that on the student's transcript, the class code and the class description is what we actually get from all the districts, whether they're online, private, public, charter. We all get that information, and that's what we utilize. We do not use any from the student. It strictly comes from the district themselves.
All right, so that's good to know. So another reason for students to stay really closely connected with their counselor to make sure they're staying informed about their record. So to stay along with the GPA calculation, Pedro, if a student took 4 years of science, how does that work if you're looking at just 3 credits of science? Are you looking at the best 3 or the first 3?
Right.
How do you calculate that?
Definitely. There are those 16 core requirements: 4 math classes, 4 English classes, 3 social science, 3 biological science, and 2 consecutive world languages. We are going to take your best score within those subcomponents. So if you've taken 5 math classes, we're going to take your best 4 classes. But we're not going to take your 5th math class instead of an actual science class. If you, example, earn 5 A's in math and 3 C's, or 4 C's, we're just still going to take just your best 4 math classes, your best 4 English classes, your best 3 social science, biological science, and your 2 consecutive world languages.
Okay, so good info to know.
And in addition to that, make sure that those classes that on our website, you're also going to know that we have the Bright Futures correspondence table. The courses that your student takes, whether they're at the high school level or at the college level or even in middle school, if it is an actual class, it's a high school level class or a dual enrollment class, if it's on the Bright Futures correspondence table, it's going to count towards the actual Bright Futures count and for that requirement for whether it's an English class, math class, social science, biological science, or world language.
Okay, very good to know, not just for science, but for all of the subjects that they take. Pedro, would you say that Bright Futures is a competitive scholarship or first come, first serve, or is it really if you apply by the deadline and qualify, you're guaranteed the funding? How does that work?
Correct, and this is very important. When it comes to the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, that is a scholarship that is based on merit. So the students do not have to fill out a FAFSA application to actually receive funding for the scholarship. If the students meet all the qualifying requirements, they will then be funded at that level based on their graduation year and going forward. Now, I also saw a question that how much does it pay? Presently, students who are earning the Florida Academic Scholarship are getting 100% of their tuition and fees paid at a state college or state university. Now, in addition to that, if the student elects to go to a private institution in the state of Florida that participates in the state of Florida Bright Future Scholarship Program, they will receive the equivalent if they were to go to a state university at a private institution, the equivalent dollar amount, not the equivalent 100% in tuition and fees at a private institution. And that money does not run out. So if the student earned their Florida Bright Future Scholarship, they are entitled to use that scholarship at a public state college, state university, private institution, and it also be getting both for the Florida Academic and the Florida Medallion. Summer funding is available and it's going to be funded. So your students upon high school graduation can immediately go to summer school and have it funded through the Florida Bright Future Scholarship Program.
All right, Pedro, so that actually answers a few other questions related to whether or not it covers just public schools or private, and the answer would be both, or where the student chooses to go. Now, along with that, is there any consequences or things to think about if the student also has Florida prepaid?
Correct. Now, just in terms of the overall financial picture, when it comes to your overall financial picture, Bright Futures is a state scholarship. It's a merit scholarship based on the student's merit, and it's going to be awarded just like any other scholarship or any other grant. Students, if they are to be evaluated for financial aid, they would first fill out a FAFSA application, the free application for federal student aid. That is an application that's done at the U.S. Department of Education. It goes through its methodology. It determines the students and the parents' EFC, or estimated family contribution. If the student elects a certain school, that school's going to have either a cost of attendance. If you take that school's cost of attendance, you subtract the EFC provided by the FAFSA, that's going to be the net financial need. If the student is then eligible for federal funds or state funds based on that financial need, that is what the school is going to start awarding first, the need-based scholarships and grants for that student. Then they're going to award any other state scholarships and grants that are associated with it, for example, the Florida Bright Future Scholarship or any other state scholarship and grant. And then the students are going to be awarded institutional funds if the student actually qualifies for institutional funds. That means money from the colleges and universities. And then they're going to apply the Florida prepay if the student has additional gap money or gap funding in that equation. So if you take cost of attendance of a school minus your EFC, minus any federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, then you would actually come in and award the Florida prepay program. And then after that, if there's still additional need, the students are going to be eligible for federal funds, federal student loans. First, they're going to have ability to get subsidized student loans. That means the government pays the interest while the student's in school. And then if they need additional funds, then the students are going to be offered student loans, unsubsidized student loans. That means the government does not pay the interest, but the student is solely responsible for paying just the interest and not the principal on the loan. And those loans go into repayment 6 months after the student graduates or leaves school for a period longer than 6 months. And if the student still needs additional funds, the student will then be offered a Parent Plus loan. And if the student needs additional funds after that, there's going to be a list of private loans for educational purposes through the schools, and you would have to contact the schools for those list of the private lenders available at that institution.
So lots of options. Go ahead, Pedro.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say lots of options for students to get aid.
Correct.
Yeah, and since you're talking about the FAFSA, Pedro, there are a couple of questions about that. One of them is if a student filled out the FAFSA before October, they were told to do so. The new one opened October 1st. We know that, but they're not going to school until next year, August 2019. So our seniors listening, if you're going to school or enrolling in August 2019, the FAFSA opened October 1st. Pedro, is this something they have to fill out every year? And how important is it that they do it as close to October 1st as possible?
Correct. We highly recommend if you would like to be evaluated for financial aid. And financial aid means all money from all four major sources. Financial aid is federal money, state money, institutional money, and private scholarship money that's available to students. So if the student wants to be evaluated, we highly recommend filling out the FAFSA as soon as you possibly can. When it comes to the Florida financial aid application, the requirement to receive the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, that is only done once during the high school senior year. You don't ever have to do that again. Once you fill out a FAFSA, your school, your post-secondary institution is automatically going to evaluate you for federal funds, state funds, institutional funds when you fill out the FAFSA. Or if you don't fill out the FAFSA, they will just evaluate you for the merit-based funds from the state of Florida and any institutional funds. Now, we still highly recommend filling out a FAFSA because it is not only for those need-based funds, but it opens up the student to be evaluated for all sorts of funds from the institution. But in addition to that, when it comes specifically to the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, students who graduate in the 2018-2019 cohort year, they have 2 years to begin their actual Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Now, if a student goes out of state, comes back, but they never fill out a state application or met all the other requirements, they lost out on that ability. If the student completed the application and the student goes out of state for 2 years, comes back, that Florida Bright Future Scholarship is still available to the students when they return. They now only have 3 years of eligibility to complete their education. However, there's a benefit to the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. If students go into the military or go and do a religious obligation for 2 years or more, if that is the case, the students will then, if by meeting all the criteria prior to them leaving high school graduation, they submit all the requirements. When they come back, the students can apply for reinstatement under those two cases for military service or for religious obligations or religious purposes, and their clock is going to start, their 5-year eligibility starts when they disengage from those commitments. So if it's a 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year in the military, their Bright Future is going to go 5 years from that actual disengagement period.
All right. So Pedro, just to reiterate, we have a lot of other specific questions that we're going to try to follow up with individually as well. But just to reiterate, if you could tell our audience where they can go to find resources or help, and then your recommendation on where they should start in terms of a contact person. Do you want them to start with their high school counselor first, go to your office? What would be the best place to start?
Definitely. We would all highly recommend FloridaStudentFinancialAid.org. Under the State Scholarships and Grants tab, you're going to see all the information about all the state scholarships and grants, all the actual fact sheets. You could go one by one to see every single one of them. This is also where our actual application for the Florida Bright Future resides. We highly recommend students to submit that application as soon as you possibly can, because even though the student submits their application today, we are still going to evaluate the student up until graduation for the classes that they've taken, the GPA that they received, the actual community service that they've done. We're also going to wait all the way up to June 30th for all test scores, whether that's ACT, ACT, or PERT test scores. If your students submit their application now, it is only one of the requirements, once again. So submit the application as soon as you possibly can. Go to FloridaStudentFinancialAid.org, and that is where we highly recommend starting. Know that information. If you have any questions or concerns, talk to your school's guidance counselors and talk to us in regards to any other question or concern that you may have in specifically to your Bright Future Scholarship or any other state scholarship and grant.
All right, so always good to know. Oh, go ahead.
Right, and I know your attendees today are going to have access to this presentation, correct? That's going to have all the websites and all the actual information available to them.
Yes, absolutely. So this presentation, along with your PowerPoint today, Pedro, will be available on floridashines.org. So if you miss any of the specifics or the tables or the links, all of that will be available for you to download again and go over it. So, and we will follow up, as I mentioned, with any specific questions regarding eligibility or the questions about the awards. We will follow up with them after this email. The rest of the questions that we've received are really about our giveaway and the scholarship from today. So I'd like to talk about our giveaway for the afternoon and reiterate that by joining us today, you've been entered to win a swag bag from Florida Colleges and Universities. So we will be drawing names at the end of the night, and we will announce the winners on all of our social media tomorrow. So follow us at FL Shines on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Again, it's FL Shines, and so good luck. Now, after the session, you'll also receive an email with information about applying for the $1,000 scholarship that we are giving away. So be on the lookout for an email, yet another way to get a scholarship and pay for your college. So, Pedro, I want to thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us here on behalf of the Florida Shines team and I. We really appreciate your expertise in this area. It's a huge area and an important part of preparing for college. So we're very thankful that you were able to join us today.
Thank you. It is my pleasure.
All right. Well, if you are interested in the FAFSA, we do have our next session starting at 5 p.m., and that's all about the form and what you need to know about filling it out. Like I said, it opened October 1st, so join us at 5 o'clock if you're interested in learning more about the FAFSA. But this concludes our first webinar of the afternoon, so thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.